pulled up, but right now my computer is just spinning. So I'm not really sure how I'm going to be able to do a screen share. Jim, are you able to pull up my presentation by chance?
Yes, I will do that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So while that's coming up here, excited to be here. My name is Travis, as James mentioned, but I know you're gonna have to give me some minutes here, babe. There now I've got my screen share that just popped up, actually. And so as he mentioned, I'm the COO of Abode Energy Management. We are a Massachusetts-based organization that really serves to help communities, utilities, and residential customers decarbonize and have a positive impact on their greenhouse gas emissions and providing healthier, more livable communities. Just to confirm, can you see my screen here as it's getting pulled up? Excellent. All right. Yeah.
I think they might have been seeing mine there.
Okay.
Try again.
Let's see. It says participants. Mine says you can see it, but it's also loading. This is just absurd, the technology problems I'm having this morning. So what we wanted to do today is spend a little bit of time talking about the experience we've had over the last 2 years in helping families explore heat pumps, particularly as it relates to broader decarbonization projects and goals. And out of that, think about ways in which the services that we provide as a local business really can help to complement the initiatives of towns, municipalities, of other organizations, and even volunteers, such as the HeatSmart Alliance, where they're aiming to help residents really wrap their arms around what heat pumps are and ultimately make positive solutions and decisions. So as I mentioned, we are a Massachusetts-based shop. We launched in 2017, and we work with a number of clients and partners throughout the region here. We are a lead vendor in the Mass Safe program, for example, and also are working in Energize, Connecticut. We are leading the Mass CEC's Decarbonization Pathways pilot right now. And we're really excited just to see the enthusiasm around decarbonization and providing real practical solutions to help families get off fossil fuels. I will note that we are hiring. So you're going to see a QR code here right now and then at the end of my presentation. So if anybody is looking for a place to have a positive impact, our team of around 25 folks would love to have you. So I'm like, go from here. So fundamentally, our goal is to help customers make confident decisions. We want them to approach their heat pump project with enthusiasm, and we want them to really move forward with the understanding of how the technology works, why they're doing it, and how to use it, and ultimately so they can tell their friends and neighbors, hey, I made a really smart decision, and here's why. Here's all the amazing benefits. Over the last 2 years, we've conducted around 2,000 consultations with households throughout Massachusetts, and we've learned a lot through this period. It's important to know that everyone's kind of at their own space or their own place along the spectrum of adoption, right? And so when we're talking to customers, it's not necessarily on our end a prescriptive path of, here are the 3 things that we always talk about with every single customer. It is oftentimes about understanding where they're at. Many folks are really just beginning. They're saying, I've heard about heat pumps. I'm really interested in air conditioning, but I've been told by my plumber or my HVAC company that they won't work for heating in Massachusetts. We hear that all the time. And really, we want to help them kind of dispel some of the myths, both in terms of what these technology is capable of and also how to use it at the end of the day. Our goal as an organization that we don't sell heat pumps. We have no financial relationships with manufacturers or installers or anybody in that supply chain. We are purely a third-party independent kind of expert that can help folks evaluate this technology and ultimately, again, make smart decisions. We lean on our personal experience, having been contractors. And so when we think about what we're doing as part of a program, our goal is really to help set those contractors up for success as well. We want contractors to, talk to our customers and say, wow, this is great. This customer has a clear understanding of their goals. They know where they're going and they know the right questions to ask. And ideally, if they find the right contractor, that's going to make for a very smooth process for them. And that we've gotten feedback from a number of contractors that has actually been their experience over the last year or so. So, I show this graph here just to demonstrate kind of the volume and the uptake. It continues to grow. And when we are talking to customers, we're ultimately trying to help them figure out what their paths are, what are their goals, right? And as I mentioned, a lot of customers come to us with pretty fundamental questions about the technology, how it works. Where we want to get folks to ultimately is in this path one. We want folks to be thinking about how they can convert their entire home's load to all electric. We want them to not just be thinking about their heating and cooling needs, but their domestic hot water, their cooking. We want them to be thinking about if there's potential for on-site generation, storage, for EV charging, kind of the whole spectrum of decarbonization. And oftentimes heat pumps really do serve as that like entry point, that teaser to get someone excited about it. So when we are talking to folks, we want to help them think about this in terms of considerations, right? We don't make any explicit recommendations as to what brand of equipment to pursue, or even explicit recommendations on the sizing and design, because we're not in the home in that moment. We can be in homes, and we have some folks that have hired us to come into the house to conduct a manual J, for example, which is a load calculation. And in those instances, we can provide much more explicit guidance. But in these cases, our goal is to really get the customer, again, comfortable with what it means to go all electric, what it might mean to be hybrid right now, relying on their existing system with a plan to go all electric, or if they are, kind of just adding a system that's meant to augment an existing heating or cooling need, what that actually means and what are the considerations along the way. We love the NEAT buyer's guide. It's something that we recommend folks leverage whenever they're going through this process. And you can also get a copy of it here by using your phone and scanning that code.
Oh, yeah. Nice. That is perfect. Perfect. Good job. Good job. Excellent.
Someone else talking there, but it's okay. Might be Brownsburg.
I think.
Office. I'm gonna mute myself. Got it. All right. So jumping over to our next slide here. One of the things that we are really excited about over the next couple of months is rolling out a new support tool for customers. And so as we've worked with customers that have gone through our process, inevitably many of them get quotes and they are still kind of puzzled as to what to choose, right? The quotes that they get from contractors can oftentimes be confusing in terms of the details that they provide or the explanations. I've seen quotes that are written down on a piece of paper that have little to no detail. I've seen quotes that are 20 pages long and just kind of overwhelming, right? So what we want to be doing here is providing a path forward where a customer can have 3 quotes analyzed through our own modeling software, and ultimately give them a sense of what they're getting and how it should operate based on their home's kind of needs and structure and their setup, their housing type. Part of today's conversation with the HeatSmart Alliance is going to be about how do we bridge and combine multiple services to ultimately provide the right level of support for a customer. And this is an example down the road where I could envision someone who does get a couple of quotes needing this level of analysis, but then maybe a HeatSmart Alliance coach or a volunteer coach from the community can step in and help augment that conversation and support that customer as they move forward. So this is coming here in the pipeline in the next month or so. And again, the goal is really to make these things that are complicated, that are confusing, actionable, and get people excited about adopting heat pumps at the end of the day. When we implement these programs, we have a couple of different approaches. One is directly with the municipalities, the towns and the communities. We have contracts with the City of Cambridge, Town of Acton, and some others. And then also with municipal light plants. I mentioned that we have 9 municipal light plant partners throughout the state. And in those programs, in both types, residents in those communities can access our services at no cost. It's subsidized by the town of the MLP. And these help to give teeth to the goals around net zero for the whole community, right? These are a resource in a space that sometimes doesn't have effective resources to support that movement from just thinking about their home energy efficiency to all the way down to the decarbonization level. And so we are seeing a lot of uptick and enthusiasm around these programs because it really ultimately gives the folks in the community a resource that, again, is not trying to sell them a product. It gives them a resource that allows them to speak with a building science expert that can kind of hold their hand and support them throughout that program. And so this is something as we're looking ahead we're excited to see growing. As I mentioned, we're working with Energize Connecticut right now to launch a statewide version of this program so that folks in Connecticut can access this regardless of what town they're in. And it'll be exciting to see how this evolves here in Massachusetts, particularly again on the decarbonization side and our ability to help residents. With that in mind, I'm going to pause. I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions and also for HeatSmart Alliance to chat. Thank you very much for your time here, and I'm excited to continue the conversation. So I'm going to stop my screen share, but my email's here if anybody needs it. And again, if you're looking for a job or know someone that is, we are hiring. So thank you all very much for your time.
Thanks very much, Travis. That was great. So I think what probably makes sense is we'll hold our questions till the end and have Tony talk about coaching from the HeatSmart Alliance side, and then we can have questions for both Travis and Tony after. So Tony, take it away.
See, Tony, if you're talking, you might be on mute still.
You can unmute yourself, Tony.
Okay, now can you hear me now? Okay.
We can hear you, but we lost your screen share.
Yeah, I'm bringing it back. There we go. So I'm Tony Jagodnik. I live in Bolton. Been a HeatSmart Alliance coach since August. And before that, I was Solarized Mass Bolton coach in 2016 and HeatSmart Bolton Harvard Bolton coach in 2018. These are the technologies that the HeatSmart Alliance deals with: air source heat pumps, mini splits typically, and multi splits, and also whole house ducted air source heat pumps. We also handle ground source heat pumps. So that's it for space heating. For water heating, we do heat pump hot water heaters. And one of the kind of prerequisites for a coach, I think, like in sports, is good to have played the sport before you coach it. So along those lines, I have all these technologies in my house, plus solar PV and a Tesla. HeatSmart Alliance was inspired by the CEC HeatSmart Mass programs that went over 2 years. We were part of the 2018 pilot program. And that was, I think, somewhat successful, not so much as solar, but we did install quite a few systems, both air and ground source. Our mission in HeatSmart Alliance is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by accelerating energy efficient heat pumps in homes and buildings. It's an all-volunteer organization, and many of the members were part of the Mass CEC HeatSmart programs. And we had an election recently, and Bob Zog was reelected the facilitator, and Brad Hubbard Nelson was reelected the treasurer. It was a landslide, unanimous vote, and no protests afterwards. We are 2 years young and expanding. This little table shows where we were a year ago and where we are now in terms of number of volunteers, and members, and associates, and also coaches and communities. Communities you can see better in this interactive map that we're developing. Eventually, you'll be able to click on a town and bring up all different kinds of parameters regarding the town and the Alliance participation in it. In this map here, the blue indicates that there's an associate member, one or more. Green indicates that there's also a full member. And the red are the towns where we have coaching. We have coaches available. Coaches typically work within their town, but also work from a distance. For example, Steve Bright from Wayland has coaches out on the Cape, has clients out on the Cape. And from Bolton, I've been doing a lot of clients up in Harvard, which is a town to the north of us. Coaching can range from a quick phone call to an extended multi-meeting interaction. First, we gather information on what the client needs. Like we have a questionnaire, we review his energy bills. We meet with them, preferably in person, but with COVID, we've been doing a lot via Zoom, and also the ones that are like on the Cape, we do via Zoom. We review the home characteristics, comfort issues, and all these other parameters listed here. And then at the end of that, we do a draft visit report. In some cases, we have a heat load tool that we've developed, and that allows us to estimate the heat load based on fuel usage history over the past several years. And it takes climatology into effect by using weather station data. Here's an example of what we provide to our clients. It's a plot of heat loss coefficient in BTUs per degrees Fahrenheit versus heated space. So the bigger homes are towards the right. And the blue dots are examples of other people's homes on which we've run this analysis. And what's of interest to the client is the red dot, which is where his house stacks up against all these others. In this case, it's pretty good. It's using less energy than many of the others below the trend line. We review quotes, we explain and compare. We might validate the heat pump size. The tool also estimates the heat pump sizing. And we suggest follow-up questions for the client to ask the installer. But in the end, we let the client decide. We don't pick for him. We serve as a guide on the side. And then we do follow up to keep in touch to make sure the client remains happy. There's some satisfaction from helping your neighbors reduce energy costs, fossil fuel consumption, and emissions while improving their own comfort. Seems like a win-win situation. We don't recommend specific installers or manufacturers. There are three cases in Bolton. The first one was a nice custom-built Cape, and began with an emergency situation. They had, their oil company told them that they had a leaky tank, and they refused to fill it up, so they had an immediate emergency. So I arranged to borrow a temporary tank to replace that. But then I also suggested that they ask for a second opinion from the oil company or someone else, and they did. And in fact, they decided, well, maybe it can last this winter yet after all. So they went ahead, and it has lasted very well so far. They're all set to get a 5-ton water furnace 7 geothermal system installed as soon as the weather permits. This is a historic home. It was built 300 years ago. It's had several updates since. And they had an emergency situation too, with respect to their electric heat pump water heater was failing. So we managed to find a installer who could do it very quickly, and he came, and they had that installed before Christmas, and it's working very well. This case began actually a month earlier, but it had hydronic oil heat, no ducts, and no possibility for adding ducts. They did have a mini split, which was installed during the HeatSmart Bolton Harvard program. But their electric water heater was nearing the end of life, so we looked at heat pump water heaters first. And they decided, and this is kind of a pioneering decision also for HeatSmart Alliance, they went with a solar-assisted heat pump, which has a thermodynamic panel outside, and it's a split system, and inside is a 52-gallon tank. And that was installed earlier this month, and it's working very well so far. All of these cases move at different paces, and they all ended up with one technology moving faster than the other. And for example, the first one's still considering heat pump hot water, and the second one's still considering ground source, and the third is considering either air source or air to water heat pump technology for their second phase. How to engage with us? You can request help from a coach, join us as a member, become a coach. We're hiring too. And we look forward to training and adding more, learning our coaching model. You can also donate unless you're a manufacturer or installer. And for communities, we can arrange for speakers and have a local green heating and cooling event. And for installers, we have a mailing list and we participate in events. We have a number of working groups. We have an installer relations working group, technology working group, coaching working group, and we all meet regularly and more often as necessary. So that these are contact points, and I guess we'll have questions next.
Great, thanks very much, Tony, for giving us that overview. So I'd like to throw it open to questions. I would ask, I think, ideally, given the theme of this, if it would be great to have questions sort of about the whole idea of coaching, things like how you can have that come to your town or get involved with it. If you have specific questions about your water heater or something, that maybe it would be best to hang out at the end if we have time. Brian Folds, let me, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, how are you? Travis, I'm wondering, when a resident comes to you or comes to Abode and asks about a heat pump, or more broadly, they want to decarbonize their property, what boundaries of services can you offer? Like, you're not going to provide them EV advice for switching their vehicle. Is that a correct assumption or incorrect?
Yeah, so it depends. The programs that we're implementing right now are focused on heat pumps kind of as the main driver of our consultation services. That being said, myself, many people on my team are EV owners. We've gone through the experience. As part of our work with Mass CEC, there is an explicit focus on EV adoption and preparing the home for EV adoption. So when we are talking to customers, based on our professional and personal experiences, we certainly do drift into those areas inevitably, in part because we don't want folks to be making decisions about improvements on their homes without thinking kind of holistically about where they are and where they want to be. But right now, we're not offering, for example, if someone's not going to go to one of these programs and say, I have questions about EVs, let me call Abode. But again, just the nature of the conversations and our philosophical approach to electrifying things, we inevitably do talk about them.
That's great to hear. The other area is thermal energy. So hot water heaters, other systems like that, like induction ovens. Is that the same answer as EVs?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Right,
and there will be increased focus. Like our Cambridge program has an explicit focus on solar thermal solutions. And so in that scenario, we do have folks that will reach out to us explicitly around that. In all of our programs that we're implementing, we also have a participating contractor list that residents can leverage to kind of get started as it relates to the technologies that we're kind of hired to support. So for example, on the solar thermal, there's the New England Solar Hot Water, who has the tank that was shown in that last system there, the solar assisted one. They're one of the folks that we would say, hey, if you're going to explore solar thermal, check out these folks and ask about this technology.
It's 11 o'clock.
So Denise Lello from Northampton, I saw you're first.
Hi, thank you. I guess this is a question for Travis, maybe also Tony, but when people think about heat pumps, in our household, when we think about heat pumps, but just generally, one of the questions is reliability of electricity during the winter, right? So do you work on battery storage or how to integrate like EV?
The bi-directional storage options.
System, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say we're early into those conversations. I do think that there is a little bit of a rationalization that we have to try to get folks comfortable with too when it comes to the amount of time in any given year, better yet, a decade in which your home is without electricity for a sustained period. So we do try to help folks kind of get comfortable with that. I think that the data supports that many of us will have well-functioning electricity, reliable electricity in most circumstances, although with increased impacts of climate change, that could become a little bit more challenging. But we are
Travis's toddler didn't disconnect his router or anything. Comes live again in a second.
Yeah, in our case, we've looked at running a ground source heat pump from a generator during an emergency situation. We wrote a white paper on how to do that. The trick there is to avoid the backup electric resistance heating from coming on, and then the load becomes very reasonable.
See, there's a note from Ken that the official will be officially closing the breakout session shortly, and there'll be some final comments in the main room. But I think if people want to hang around for a while, we're happy to continue answering some questions here.
My computer died on me here. Sorry. Just add it to the list of technology issues. I'm not sure where you lost me. The punchline on that is yes, with solar storage, we are having those conversations increasingly. But I think that with climate change, we're going to have them a lot more, just to help people from a resiliency standpoint.
And I saw there was a question earlier from Larry. I don't know if you still have it.
Yeah, thanks. Quickly, sorry, we're probably going to get kicked out of the breakout rooms, but I live in Somerville, and one of the things I hear from other residents is the need to upgrade their electrical service or move their electrical panel in order to put in air source heat pumps, and that cost becomes prohibitive unless there are other options. And I'm kind of curious if that's something that your coaching covers as well, and different options in order to get around those constraints.
From the Abode standpoint, absolutely, that is a concern that we see. It's also, we are continually trying to help people think about their future needs. So not only making an improvement from 100 amp to 200 amp, but considering even going up to a larger amperage to cover future load like EVs, induction cooktops, and the like. Placement of that can be challenging, but that is the type of thing that when we're coaching, especially before they start talking to a contractor, that's in that list of kind of, here's things you need to consider. Ask your contractors how they're going to deal with the situation, and if that cost is included in the quote that they're going to be giving you, because a lot of times those things are broken out, and so we want to make sure that there's clear expectations there.
One of the first things we ask our client, and when we do the home visit, is the power panel. We see the spare slots available. If not, we discuss with them the cost of expanding it. And most of the homes here are 200 amp now. But again, if it's necessary to expand, they might want to go beyond that. We also try to reduce the amount of added load from the heating and cooling systems that we're adding, so that that helps to minimize the added requirements on the service.
See a question from Phil Coonley.
Yeah, two quick questions. For Travis, do you have an hourly rate, or is that how it works? And,
yeah, right now
you have an hourly rate, consulting rate?
So we basically have a kind of per consultation rate right now that for the market rate services. So typically runs around $150 for the consultation. We are on-site services vary depending on what you need. Like say to run a manual J, it depends on the size of the home, for example, and the analysis that would be needed there. We also work in the renovations and additions program as part of Mass Save. So if folks are wanting to leverage those types of services, we can do that as well.
Okay, and then for, thank you. And then for Tony, you said Winchester's a full member. What does that mean? I'm from Winchester, just curious.
It means that we have a member of the HeatSmart Alliance who lives in Winchester.
Oh,
and
great.
participates as a member. He needs to participate in at least one of the working groups that I mentioned.
The sort of model in HeatSmart Alliance is getting members in each community who can serve as kind of the point people and then direct people towards coaches or be coaching themselves.
Thank you.
Question from Mark Sandine.
Not a question, but I just wanted to say I am a Abode customer and very happy. So they helped me through figuring out whether I could go with heat pumps in a ducted heating system, and also helped me through coming up with a manual J for the house so we were appropriately sized. And so as anybody who knows me knows, I have lots of questions. They answered all of those questions in an exceedingly professional manner.
Thanks, Mark.
I just want to make one quick comment before we go back, which is I put in the chat a link for any Concord resident to see the list of services Abode provides for Concord Light. So you can go right to that web page and get set up.
Great. Well, thanks everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
For this, and the recordings will be made available for the people who registered for it afterwards, both of the main event and of this breakout room, and encourage you to get in touch with HeatSmart Alliance and or Abode, depending on where you're at geographically.
James, there was a question about whether we could make the presentations available.
Oh, the presentations. We'll check with Travis
Yeah, I'll get a PDF out to you, James, that can be shared. Should be fine.
Okay, yeah, and we'll do that through the organizers. Share that as well. Great. Well, thanks everyone for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thank you all.